Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natasha Baum, and I'm a Senior Project Manager at Dixon. We are a proud sponsor of the Constructing Excellence SECBE Award in the Sustainability category. Delivering brilliant buildings that are fit for future is intrinsic to Dixon mission, and I had the privilege of being the judge of this category. I am delighted to be joined by the representatives from each team, and I would like to introduce them now. If we can have the next slide, please. I will explain first how the session will run today. So I have to inform you, unfortunately, we only have 45 minutes. So we'll have to finish on time because the next session swiftly follows our trail. Our aim today is to share some thought leadership and hopefully inspire each other to change our perspective and improve the way we're doing things. Hopefully we'll have some time for questions, so please pop them in the Q&A box. And the recording of this session will be made available on the awards website next week. So, and we will introduce our panelists. So joining me today are Heat Matosian. He's the Innovation Director of Boy Tie Construction. Kenny Hills, Head of Environment at Costain-Skanska JV. James Staniland, Director at Brinson Staniland Partnership. Dave Hughes, Design Director at Hughes Architects. And Andrew Shepherd, Managing Director at TopHat. The next slide, please. So, in 2019, the UK government committed to achieving net zero emissions by 2050. It is an ambitious target, and the roadmap is still being debated and developed. The government support will undoubtedly play a significant role in achieving this target, but it will also be looking at businesses to lead the way. As Constructing Excellence mission is learning from the best, I think today's session provides a perfect platform for our panelists to share their experience in delivering exemplar projects. As the projects in this category are so different, it is a good opportunity to discuss different aspects and approaches to delivering net zero. And I invite the panelists and the listeners to discuss future goals and opportunities for the industry and imagine the future for sustainability beyond 2050. A poll will shortly appear on the screen. Please start voting, and we will see the results in a minute or so. And the results are in. We have a good spread. It is interesting. We have one clearly unpopular category, but we have a clear winner. We're talking about innovation and technology. And on this, I'm going to invite a couple of the panelists to start sharing their thoughts. I would like to speak to Dave and Andrew and to talk about what innovation and technology and investment in innovation and technology has meant for you, and what opportunities do you see in future. So Dave, if we could start with you, please.
Yeah, hi Natasha, thank you. I was quite interested by the poll. It's not the one I voted for, so yeah, I'm glad that you've come to me first. So yeah, we're doing a series of sites for Greenwich Council. So we're delivering net zero carbon affordable housing for Greenwich Council. And one of the things about technology that we've been talking to them a lot with, and a lot of housing associations with, which is a lot of our work, is asset management, to be honest. So a lot of the technology which we're using on a residential scale, air source heat pumps, photovoltaics, mechanical ventilation, heat recovery, the technology is all there. The big conversation we're having at the moment is about hydrogen adaptation of boilers, hydrogen networks and things like that. But one of the things where I think that as consultants and we're architects, as designers, we need to have more conversations about is long-term asset management. So MVHRs are a classic. Mechanical ventilation, heat recovery, all fabulous, but you need to change the filters. So therefore, there's a big discussion about whose job is it to change the filter? Are you then relying on the residents, et cetera, et cetera? The same with air source heat pumps, that, you know, the people like Greenwich Council may end up owning thousands of air source heat pumps. So should they be picking at this point in time whether to go Samsung or Mitsubishi, or, you know, how do they do it? Because their whole maintenance and sort of repair mechanism is not necessarily set up. They have loads of engineers who can come and fix gas boilers. They don't have a lot of engineers who can come and fix air source heat pumps. So I think there's a big piece of work for us to do as an industry about reliability and about real people living in these houses and how do they operate them and then what happens with them. So I think part of the innovation really needs to be about simplifying, making it real world applications, testing how these things are maintained, testing how people interact with them, so that we don't end up with, the wood chips again that no one ends up using after 4 or 5 years. So yeah, I think for us, that's quite an important piece of work that we're doing at the moment.
Just to add to what Dave said, I find it quite interesting that he's listed off a huge number of low carbon technologies, ultra low carbon technologies that are already out there. And actually, for me, a lot of it is about actually going out to the market, buying the technologies there, and then deploying them into new homes. There is definitely an upskilling. We've built houses with air source heat pumps and PVs, and residents haven't known how to use them. So there's a soft landing process that we need to go through. The other big question for me is, if we talk about carbon, where is our focus? Are we focused on the embodied carbon? That's our carbon that we create here and now when we built the asset. Or are we more concerned about the carbon over the next 60 years over the life of the asset? Because over that 60-year period, there's an assumption that the grid's going to decarbonise. So sort of maybe sort of pushing the agenda, maybe, do we need to even worry about the whole life carbon if we're going to decarbonise the grid? And should we focus on the here and now carbon, the embodied carbon of the units that we're producing?
That's a very good point. Thank you, Andrew. I couldn't let this question go without asking Hagap to contribute, because I think you are developing something very interesting. You have a very exciting project.
Yeah, so the focus on innovation. I mean, a big part of what we're doing is trying to bring together products in combination that have never been combined before, whether it's demand control ventilation, air source heat pumps. Basically, you have a net zero carbon retrofit system for urban environments, for low-rise buildings, which right now modelling shows that it can cover 98% of its annual electricity demand through its solar array. And then further optimization through how that array is set up, using it to support the grid, either supplying power when needed or soaking up. So yeah, it's there's just so many opportunities right now.
I find it interesting that both three gentlemen are talking about the technology that is already known to the industry. Can you imagine something going beyond, or do you think we just need to be better at using the technology we have? I think Dave wants to contribute.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I think the thing is that we might know. This might all be known to us, but for literally every single affordable house I've done, it is not known to the residents. And so, as Andrew pointed out, there is already a big learning piece for people who are not in the industry to get up to speed with how to use some of these technologies when people have been living in houses with gas boilers forever. And so it's really interesting about pushing it at the right speed and innovating at the right speed with the right communication to the people who are actually going to use it. It's very easy for me as an architect to specify something and walk away. We don't do that as architects, but when you come back in 10 or 15 years, is that technology still working? How has it worked? What's the data that's come out of it? Certainly, we were doing a project the other day, and the London plan has introduced Be Seen at the end. So be clean, be green, be seen. So that it's about data capture and about, well, what are we going to do about analysing the way these technologies are working, and therefore saying whether or not there's something that we need to keep going with. On the innovation stuff, yeah, we're talking a lot about the hydrogen adaptation, and in fact, we're trying to include a hydrogen CHP. We're doing a scheme that involves a swimming pool, so CHP really lends itself to a heat sink for the swimming pool, and we're really struggling to find a technology for hydrogen. And we can find gas that will be converted later. But what we're struggling with is finding anything at the moment with hydrogen. So, yeah, that lots of people are talking about that. I will let someone else talk, I think.
And Hagab, could you please?
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought that a big part of success is how you tell the story. And if you're successful on a project, you've got to find ways of telling the story that will appeal to as many different people as possible. You know, Exeter Council, for example, they've been exclusively building passive house, new build, social housing for the last 4 or 5 years. There are lots of other councils nationwide who haven't built a single one. Exeter have shown that it's excellent for the health and well-being of their residents. They've shown that it's long-term, makes a lot of sense in terms of maintenance costs. It reduces operational carbon. It's working for them. So why aren't more councils picking up on that, more local authorities? You know, that's the question I always ask myself. And with all our projects, how can we tell the story to appeal to more people and help get this more widespread adoption?
I would really like to pick up on this, but before we move on to the discussion about data capture, and we have a number of panelists here who can tell a very interesting story on their projects. I would like to bring James into this discussion, because we were talking about the technologies that are very well known to the industry and to the professionals in the industry, and it's about the application. I think your project was an embodiment of that.
Mm. Yes, I mean, I tick the embodied energy box because I think by promoting a reduction in embodied energy, you're pushing more for refurbishment, trying to make use of existing housing stock, avoiding all the mistakes that were made in London after the Second World War, where they were knocking down lovely Victorian houses because they had damp problems, building not skyscrapers, but large blocks of flats. So I think with the embodied carbon, and also with the standards that are coming out now, where you can actually measure it, you're going to make a major win when you decide we're not going to knock this building down. We're actually going to refurbish it or maybe repurpose it. But there have been a lot of errors with repurposing, I believe. I think a lot of this offices to resi conversion has brought about some very low quality projects, unfortunately. We're getting a lot of apartments being built out of buildings that were previously offices, and they don't have balconies, and they overheat easily in summer. So there's no refuge for the residents to go due to the lack of a balcony, and the structure is designed for an office. The structural requirements for apartments are much greater, so they're being made, you know, with light construction, using paneling, using large areas of windows, and very little thermal mass, which means that you're getting a lot of overheating. So I'm a big voter for making use of existing buildings to create a new environment for people. But at the same time, I think particularly with repurposing, there's a lot of mistakes that have been made just in the last 5 years that we need to learn from immediately.
Would you say that the BC strategy, the communication of how it can be done better, will play a positive role?
Yeah, going back to Dave's point about asset management. I mean, we're having some clients who are actually quite frightened of underfloor heating, let alone air source heat pumps. We've got clients who are from councils who are worried about being able to heat spaces up quickly with underfloor heating. They're worried about them cooling down and heating up at all the wrong times, and they've had a few bad experiences. And even 25 years after Britain started to use underfloor heating, we're finding clients who are still nervous about it.
I'd like to.
With one particular client where that has happened recently, by doing a cell. When I say a cell, I mean a cell with integrity. You know, we managed to eventually convince them that the underfloor heating would work. But it needs, people need to be converted to these things and to get more used to them.
It's a very interesting point, and it's picking up on one of the Paul's suggestions. But I wanted to bring Kenny into the conversation, because we were just talking about communicating, and I think again there is something that your project has done very well, and I would like you to share a little bit about this.
Okay,
thank you. So when we're tasked with these rather large infrastructure projects, very high profile ones, they come with obviously risks, but they come with quite a lot of opportunity in knowledge learning. And in particular, the scheme that I'm involved in, which is coming to an end, is the enabling works for the high-speed rail. And what that's done is provided us with a very large supply chain that covers a lot of services, and services that you might not think of, that you might not have delved into to look at the hotspots, and that's what we call them in our industry. Is someone gives us a scope, we look at the services, we look at the hotspots, and then you look at the scenarios that allow opportunities, I guess. And when you have such a large supply chain as we had, we were able to really tease out from them in a very sort of collaborative way. We would have opportunities workshops with all of the suppliers, and it was part of the contract, and we did make it. It was a loose bit of the contract, so we made it, we made people want to be part of it and actually want to own their carbon. And there was no carbon too small, carbon too big. Everyone would assess what that service and what that scope of works and contract was how it was gonna contribute to reducing the carbon. And we talk about technology, and we talk about trialing, and we talk about lessons. You were talking about just please grab the learning. Tell us what you did last time. Don't do what you did last time. Do something different. Try it here in this little area. Convince people. And there was so much comes out of people. There's so many people with so many actual solutions, on ground, cold face ones, and then kind of quite technological, techie ones, I'll call it. But actually, I think if you just engage in the right way, you can get a lot from people, and people are more than willing, and more than they've ever been willing, to actually reduce carbon footprints in their services. It's not oh, this is impossible, or this is going to impact the program, or this is going to take longer. It's people are more incentivized, I feel, these days to drive things down.
That's a really positive message, and it leads me into my question, because I would like to open the discussion with everybody. What Kenny has just described is that there are certain tasks in all that process that at the moment seem very difficult. But on your projects, can you share examples where something seemed to be so difficult, but actually turned out to be a relatively straightforward and positive experience? Andrew?
So this is something we looked at in a previous organisation, and one of the things we were trying to identify is how do we reduce the carbon within our business, and how do we reduce our carbon from travel. And this is definitely a pre-COVID world. And one of the things we looked at is if we map everyone down onto 4 days a week in the office and 1 day a week from working home, we'd instantly cut our carbon by 20% associated with travel. And those are the kind of easy things you can do. And actually, it was probably sort of fairly groundbreaking at the time to think like that. But actually now it's something we're all doing. So by default, through what's happened is we're all saving carbon. There are many sort of simple things, as Kenny describes, that everyone could do. And it's about saying nothing is too small. I think all of the getting into the culture and getting into the behaviour of trying to save carbon is absolutely key.
Would anybody else would like to contribute?
Yeah, okay. I'll go back again. Yeah, so we've struggled. We've really wanted to get rid of diesel from some of our operations, and some of our plant and some of our equipment, whether it be task lighting, whether it be site lighting, whether it be the excavators, dumpers, diggers, and we've had various engagement for actually several years on alternative fuels. There's always been, how credible are they? What do they, the manufacturer or the plant providers would always say, you'll get rid of warranties. And you can kind of picture all these things about this mysterious liquid going into these machines when everyone, well, no, the red diesel just works. And it does the job, and we understand the commercial aspects around it and the different sort of tax arrangements around diesel, which might not be around for very long, probably. But we had to convince people of an alternative fuel that we could really make a really decent impact on a big hotspot that would really add value and benefit and teach us. So we kind of convinced the supply chain over a period of time. We went first. We asked one of our plant providers to go first, to just keep on trying it in more machines and more machines. And over sort of a 5-month period, we just slowly crept. We weren't telling too many people about it, but actually what we were doing, we were almost we've almost eliminated it, actually. And not at the height of the contract and not at the peak of it, because actually probably would have been harder, if I'm honest. But at the tail end, we've proven you can almost get rid of it. And sort of we've got 5 months now where it's there or thereabouts. The only thing is we got to the end and then I realized I had to tell everyone we haven't actually solved everything yet because we need to go to electric. So it goes back to the original thing someone said, is that you have got to do the things you can do in the timeframes you can do with the technology you've got. And that doesn't mean you don't do anything because you know that technology, you need to be somewhere else.
Hagop?
I think for us, it was engaging residents and getting residents to support the concept of retrofit. We're always a bit nervous about introducing this idea of retrofitting a building while the residents stay in place. Most we thought they would just say no because they didn't want the disruption and there wouldn't be enough perceived benefit. In the end, the Lancaster West neighbourhood team, after quite a lot of engagement, which I fed into, which was delivered by the Lancaster West neighbourhood team and our partner Social Landscapes, who are permaculture specialists in resident engagement. The Lancaster West neighbourhood team decided to ask the residents to vote on whether or not they wanted a net zero carbon retrofit. And out of the 38 flats, 25 voted, 24 voted yes, and 1 abstained. So the residents definitely want it. I think we ended up doing quite well in communicating the benefits to the residents, and now they're all very excited about it.
That's a great example. I really liked what I think Kenny said, owning their carbon. Andrew and Dave, is something, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, just pick it up on Hagop's point about communication. And I know we're talking about lots of different things, but one of the things that Greenwich did, which we've really picked up on, was about fuel poverty. So a big driver for their net zero carbon for residential was actually about fuel poverty issues and about reduction of fuel costs. And so one of the big communication pieces we do with residents is the fact that there is an immediate benefit from day one of moving in, that their energy bills will go from whatever it is down to less than £200 a year. And so part of the communication is not just about the techie stuff or the big world stuff. And you're right, there is, and picking up what Kenny said, there is undoubtedly a much more of an understanding than there used to be. And so people are already primed to want to join in with net zero carbon. But beyond, us all watching David Attenborough documentaries, there is an immediate today, £200 a year fuel poverty. And to be honest, from a social value point of view, it's really, really good. I mean, on our projects, we I'm not sure we necessarily struggled. I think we all got together at the beginning collaboratively and said, why are we doing what we're doing? Greenwich Council are very clear on why they want to do it. And so, all of the supply chain and all the contractors involved and all the design team involved, we all really wanted to make it happen. And so it down to the individual guys on site really bought into this idea of this is going to be net zero carbon, it's going to be rented affordable. So for us, it was a really enjoyable experience, to be honest, to be able to deliver these things for local people. So it was really good. So, yeah.
I saw a big thumbs up from Hagup on the eliminating fuel poverty.
Yeah, we did the same. I mean, we also focused on that. We focused on eliminating fuel poverty. Our design is such that the building will never fall below 19 degrees, even without any active heating. And residents understand that. That means that even if someone can't afford to pay their heating bill, they are not going to be cold during wintertime. And the other thing we focused on is you eliminate gas boilers, you eliminate all local emissions resulting from the use of the building. And we worked that out at being 419 tons of carbon dioxide and 1.2 tons of nitrous oxides. So people will support that. By removing gas boilers, you're actively improving the health of the local environment. You're reducing childhood asthma and all the associated respiratory diseases.
That's fantastic. James, would you mind to share, because this is something that you had to address in your project as well?
Well, on the subject of communication.
Both communication and actually addressing, we're talking about emissions, but it is not just about direct emissions, isn't it? It's about air quality and comfort.
I think the thing I want to show off about in terms of communication is that our project, just in case people haven't had a chance to read up on it, it's an existing Edwardian building. It's an adult education centre, and the south-facing rooms were overheating dramatically, and the staff and the students were suffering because they were opening the windows on hot summer's days, and guffs of air pollution and noise were experienced from traffic on the main road outside. So our job ended up being cooling those south-facing rooms down without using refrigeration. So we designed a mixed-mode ventilation system to cool those rooms down, and we put certain defences in place. Now, the building was listed, and so we had to get planning permission for all our modifications, and we had to get listed building consent as well. And the reason I'm saying I'm showing off about it is because I don't know anything about planning. I don't know anything about dealing with historic England, but using very helpful fellow consultants, we obtained planning permission without any commencement conditions for our ideas, and we managed to do the project with very minimal impact on the facade. So that part of the project went far easier than I expected. So what was the second thing, Natasha? Sorry. So that was communication.
Communication and, well, the wider impact, because it's...
So, yes.
Yeah.
So when we were at feasibility stage, we looked at air conditioning as one of the options, and by designing a mixed mode ventilation system, which was proved by computer dynamic simulation modeling, using various passive defensive methods of reducing heat gains and so on, we were able to save about 8 tons a year of carbon. And that's on 15 rooms, which can accommodate about 25 students each.
I think this is a great example of how, well, the best in the industry are utilizing the technologies that are available to achieve this. But there is a very interesting discussion happening in the chat. I think Hagup is interacting, and this is where I'd like to take you. And I think the people who joined this panel wanted to hear about this. Is that what is the next big thing? What will happen after we, let's say, net zero carbon is achieved in 2050. You must have come across something in your projects that you thought, well, this will definitely, on the next project, this will take us further. So who would like to start? James?
I've given this some thought. So I think it's a bit like splitting the atom. So that the atom was split in 1932, but they eventually made an atomic bomb in 1945. So there's technologies, we already know about them, but we know that they've got extremely high costs. So I think post 2050, and I worked out that if I live as long as my father did, I'll still be alive then. I think we could be looking at fuel cells. So I think fuel cells would hopefully become a serious contender for heating, for operating transport, but also for providing heat in buildings. So I think fuel cells is something we'll see, and then possibly going back to splitting the atom. Maybe someone will have worked out how to create the chain reaction for fusion, where atoms join together, and we may be able to just create heat from water. So I think those are the two technologies that come to mind at the moment. They're already known, but it's very hard to fast track them and do them at an economical, at a low enough cost.
Dave, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'm gonna come from the other end, and I'm gonna say, in parallel, I do think we will see an increase in low tech. We helped out on a hydro dam where there's an existing weir and an Archimedean screw, and we did some concept stuff. So I do think there will be a group, particularly not necessarily in urban areas, but more rural areas, where people will start using water mills again, and things like hydro stuff and small wind turbines and PVs, where it becomes very low tech and it becomes very much off grid, and it becomes really easy to fix and really easy to run. But the reason for that is we can all go and buy a really reliable generator or a really reliable X, Y, and Z. So I think in parallel with all of the sort of space age shininess, there will also be this, almost survivalist, low tech group who will plug into both of those things. So that's where I think we're going.
Interesting. Hagop, would you like to share?
Yeah, this is a great sci-fi fantasy question, isn't it? It's like really invites you to dream. I'm hoping we'll get a lot more carbon sequestration materials. The most important of which is around us right now. We see it every day, timber. We're seeing more and more tall buildings made of timber. I think there's one in Japan which is going up, which is sort of over 40 floors at the minute. Combination of timber and steel. There's an amazing company out there called Biome who are working on growing materials, growing insulation using mycelium. They've got a product where they can use food waste from residential developments and turn that into a particle board, which can then be used in construction. And I've seen orange flavored particle boards and coffee flavored particle boards. They even have a bit of a distinct smell. I think the buildings will have much more extensive solar shading, because a lot of the glass and steel structures around us today, they tend to overheat. We tend to heat them in winter and then try and cool them in summer, which for me is just terrible design. So yeah, let's keep dreaming and imagining and seeing what we can create.
Andrew, I saw you nodding. Would you like to? What resonated with you?
I'm going to agree with Hagop. As a contractor and manufacturer that only uses timber, we think timber's a great case and part of the future. The thing that always concerns me is we're building more and more airtight apartments that are more and more efficient, and they're just getting hotter and hotter and hotter in the real world. So actually looking at how we manage to create coolth within apartments, how we manage to manage that process, because I still think, we're looking at increased warming, we're looking at increased, potentially more sunlight, and yet to see too many projects that manage to achieve a good temperature differentiation during the height of summer. So I think, there's still a lot of work to do around there. So is there a future for cooling? I don't know. We just need to keep looking at that.
Thank you. Kenny, would you like to share your thoughts?
I might just end up paraphrasing. Fusion's a good one, James. I always think about fusion. Another thing that Dave said too about that simple side of things, not so much on my project, but I know the schemes that we do, some of the water companies, we've just stripped back and not build less, just stop building, which is obviously sort of a little bit against the model of what my company is trying to achieve. But we're using more natural tools, natural materials, natural processes that actually used to take place. Filtration of water and things, as opposed to putting actual plant in and stuff. Again, for me, we are really trying to maximize prefab and design for manufacture, really trying to push it as much as we can, which still means you've got to do stuff back there. And that's actually a lot closer than it is the future, I guess, really. But actually, we're trying to see as much as we can do on that. And then like the materials side of things, just really, really trying to know where that line is of net zero and where concrete and steel will be and what other things can be there. Because, we have done projections and we have got science-based targets, but we are really trying to pin down dates to when we get to the desired outputs. But, we can see there the smaller bits at the end are quite challenging.
I found very interesting that you mentioned something linked to biodiversity. I'm really pleased you have. But I found it very interesting that we're talking about timber, but carbon sequestration was a very unpopular choice. I don't think anybody voted for that. Why do you think that is?
Well, that was carbon capture, which is a bit different from carbon sequestration. So if you build with timber, you're sequestering carbon. Carbon capture is like active technologies, suck carbon out of the atmosphere, which Elon Musk has decided to supply $100 million prize for whoever can work out an effective way of doing it, which is cool. But I think, most of us, we want everyone to reduce carbon. We don't want businesses to have an excuse to continue emitting carbon because they know that someone else is sequestering it.
Fantastic answer. Does everybody agree? That's very good. Let's go back to 2021. So we only have 5 minutes left, I think. But talking about the opportunities and potential threats for the industry, was there anything on your projects that you would have liked to take further, but one of those, whether it was the technology or the government support or something else that just wasn't in place? And so if there were any of those missed opportunities, what do you need from the industry, from the society, from the government to take it further? Who would like to start? Hagar.
Yeah, this ties in with the poll as well, because I think, I chose policy and whatever the answer was around policy. But the answer I think was missing really is incentivization followed by mandation, which has worked really well in Vancouver, where they've basically given people an incentive. You can have more area for your building when you apply for planning permission if you build to the Passive House standard. And they've also let everyone know that, hey, by the way, in a couple of years, it's going to be mandatory to build to the Passive House standard, which really gets people going. It's like, okay, if I become an early adopter, I get a bonus, and I'm going to have to do it anyway in future. For me, that's the way to really make progress. If you look at supermarkets and plastic bags, how many years did supermarkets give away disposable plastic bags? And people talked about stopping them from doing so. how many excuses were created. The government makes them illegal, and they stop, and that's that, and everyone just gets used to it.
Completely agree. So, Dave and Andrew, you're nodding. Would you like to?
Yeah, no, I tick the policy box as well on that quiz, because it is very difficult without the policy to then unlock the funding, and without unlocking the funding, it's then very difficult for people to find the money to do all these things. It is as simple as that. So we have lots and lots of clients who desperately want to do this. We have lots of local authorities that do, and yet they're all grappling with, well, how do I pay for it when I don't have to pay for it yet? And so there is, the intent is there, no doubt about that. In fact, most of the people we talk to, most of the clients, in fact, most of the residents we talk to are fully supportive of this and the social value and the health benefits, and everyone's pretty much understanding that. The big question is, well, how do I do it? What do I not buy to have the money to do it if I can't get additional funding? There is additional funding, of course, with but they tend to be trial projects, or they tend to be specialist projects, but there is not a general piece of funding. And I think, what Haggart was saying there about Vancouver is a brilliant idea. You can have bigger returns because you can build more if you do the passive house, and that pays for it. Fairly simple stuff to me. So I think the policy, unfortunately, no matter how much people want to do things, unless there is a way of doing it, then it's always gonna be niche, small people doing things because they can. So yeah, I think that's where we are with it.
Also, if you give them a little carrot to do it, rather than saying you've got to do it by this date, catch up or it's too late, it kind of puts people in a more positive frame of mind.
Absolutely.
I think I'd just add to Dave's point. If you're in an existing house and it has poor energy efficiency, there was a world where you could go and get a green homes grant, so you could get money from the government to go and make your home more efficient. If you built a new house, there's absolutely no incentive for the developer, anyone, to go and do that. So we can use the tax system, stamp duty, whatever it is, to encourage. And back to Haggart's point, there are many different ways of using the tax system or any kind of system to encourage better behaviours.
I think this is something the government is looking into, so hopefully the right people are listening to us as well. We only have 1 minute left. What a shame. This was an exciting discussion, and I think that the wider audience has now seen and had a little glimpse of what we had in Judging Day. Thank you so much for your participation today. It was a fantastic conversation. So please don't forget to join us at 5:30. You do need to register. There is a link in the chat to find out who the winner in this category is. And good luck to everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much.